The Untouchables and the Pax Britannica by Babasaheb Ambedkar. Part 3. The land routes were devious and dangerous. They were insecure and transportation over them was difficult and expensive. Robbers plundered the merchants and governments taxed them beyond measure. Of the two land routes, the northern was not a highway to the same extent as the middle one was, with its deadly camel journey of alternate shores and torrid wastes, rendered it available only for articles of small bulk. It never attained the importance of the middle route. Even this middle or Indo-Syrian route was not always open. It was blocked twice. Once between 1632 to 1651 AD, when the Saracen Arabs, under the conquering impulse of Islam, seized the countries of this Indo-Syrian route. For a second time, it was blocked during the Crusades in the 11th century. The southern route was for the most part a sea route and was equally unsafe. The storms of the Indian Ocean and its adjacent waters were destructive to vast numbers of the frail vessels of the east. Piracy weighed with storms in its destructiveness, and port dues were still higher than those of inland marts. But, as Professor Cheney observed, with all these impediments, eastern products nevertheless arrived at the Mediterranean in considerable quantities and were available to the European merchants. When these land routes existed, why did there arise the necessity for a sea route? The answer is the Turks. The answer is the Turkish and Mongol upheaval in further Asia, which overthrew the Saracenic culture and ruined the trade with Europe. This upheaval was a new force. It first came into operation when, about 1038, the self willed Turks burst upon Persia. Two countries later, the Mongols poured over Asia under Genghis Khan. In 1258, the Mongols captured Baghdad. In 1403, Timur captured Syria. In 1453, Constantinople fell to the Turks. This upheavals of the Turks and the Mongols completely blocked the two land routes. The southern route was the only route that was open for some time, but even that was blocked when Egypt was conquered by the Turks in 1516. Two factors are responsible for bringing the European nations to India. First, spices. Second, the blockade of the old overland trade routes by the Turks and the Mongols. It is these factors which drove the European nations to search for a sea route to India and which they ultimately found. Having come to trade with the East Indies, these Europeans remained there to conquer it. That evidently resulted in a struggle for supremacy. The struggle between the English and the Portuguese and the Dutch, on the other hand, was for commercial supremacy. The theatre of the struggle between the English and the Portuguese was India and the Persian Gulf, and ended in favor of the British in 1612 so far as India was concerned, and in 1622 so far as the Persian Gulf was concerned. From 1622, India and the Persian Gulf lay open to England, and the Portuguese ceased to be any menace to the development of English trade and commerce. The theatre of the struggle between the English and the Dutch lay in the Malaya archipelago. It was decided against the English in 1823 by what is called the Massacre of Amboyana, whereby the English receded to India and left the Dutch to enjoy exclusively the trade with the Malaya archipelago. The struggle between the English and the French was a mighty struggle. The theatre of this struggle was India proper. The object of this struggle was political sovereignty and not commerce. The French had established themselves in the south of India and the east. So far as southern India is concerned, the conflict began in 1744 and ended in 1760 at the Battle of Vendevoche, where the French were completely vanquished. So far as eastern India is concerned, the struggle was a single battle in 1757, the Battle of Plassey, in which the French lost along with the Nawab whom they supported as against the English. With the elimination of the French, the English alone were left to be the rulers of India. But how was the conquest of India received by the peoples of India? The end.